what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here, and today I will be doing my review for Renegades by Marissa Meyer. So, this is the beginning of a new reread slash finish series for the Renegades trilogy by Marissa Meyer. I have at this point read the first two books. The first book I have just now read for the third time, whereas the second book I have read once and will be going on to my second read of it with this reread slash finish series because I have been slacking on finishing series and I feel like I have to basically start over with a bunch of them because I don't remember shit about what happens. This series, though, being the major exception to that because the first book is my favorite of any start to any series that there ever has been. Every time I have read this book, I've given it 5 stars. This time, no exception to that. I love this book so much. It is one of my favorite books of all time. It is my favorite Marissa Meyer book by far because I have read a few of her books, but this is the one still to beat for me, and I have a lot of reasons as to why. And I'm going to tell you those once I get through the synopsis. So this basically takes place in a world where the world is full of superheroes, or what are basically called prodigies. Every person has various different powers, and the world is ruled by what are called the Renegades. There is a history in the past where basically there are prodigies who had taken over that kind of had more nefarious purposes called the Anarchists, and there was a time called the Age of Anarchy. Things kind of were just mass hysteria. During that time, one of our main characters named Nova Artino is very young, and her family is murdered basically in front of her when she's a young child. And her uncle, who is named Ace Anarchy, who is basically the person that started the Age of Anarchy, takes her away, and essentially she grows up in a world where she believes the Renegades are not as great as they seem, and with that she ends up basically joining up with the Renegades in secret to try and infiltrate their group and figure out how to take them down from the inside. We have another character who is our second protagonist named Adrian Everhart. Adrian is the son of one of the main Renegades who basically were a group of Avengers-like people who basically overthrew the Anarchists and brought the world more into a world of peace and good nature. They're not necessarily heroes. They call themselves the Renegades because they definitely weren't necessarily trying to be fully good people, but they definitely didn't like what was going on with the Age of Anarchy, so they did just basically take over and were kind of more vigilantes, I guess, if you would like to call them that. Adrian, like I said, is the son of one of the original Renegades named Lady Indomitable, who unfortunately was killed when Adrian was very young, and Adrian as a young kid then is adopted by 2 of the other Renegades who are a gay couple. So we actually have a male-male romance within this. Not super really important, but it's just really cool to see that a character who also, by the way, is a black character has 2 fathers, and it was one of the things I loved about this. I really enjoyed that a lot about this series when I first started it. But Adrian has this very deep, dark secret where he is actually another superhero in a sense in disguise. Nobody knows that he is what is called the Sentinel, and he's trying to keep that as low profile as possible because of the fact that basically, if anybody finds out he's the Sentinel, he could be in a lot of trouble because the Sentinel is kind of the vigilante of vigilantes, and he's caused some issues for the Renegades in general. So here are the things that I love about this series, and don't worry, there are some things that I definitely think are issues, but I love this series so much that there are things that I tend to overlook when it comes to this, but they are issues nonetheless. But let's go through the things I love first. First of all, fast-paced, fun characters. This book seriously flew through. The third time through, I remembered everything that happened, obviously, within this, but this one is just so fun because I love the Marvel series, and I think that any Marvel fan is gonna really enjoy this because it has a very similar feel to the kind of Avengers-esque thing that we see within Marvel, and it's just so fun, especially to watch Adrian's chapters because I think that he is just such a sweet and lovable guy, and every time I read this, I swoon over him because he's just a genuinely decent guy, and you start to kind of see this kind of romantic feeling develop for Nova, who is kind of undercover, but he doesn't know she's undercover, and so there's a lot of tension with that, and Nova's having some difficulty with grappling with that idea too, and it's just so sweet to watch this whole thing happen. All of the side characters are absolutely awesome. All of the anarchists are really interesting and fun to read about. And then you also have the other people that Adrian works with that are in the Renegades. And I just adore them. I think they are so fun. There's definitely some bad apples within the Renegades that we learn more about in the second book, Arch Enemies, but nonetheless, they're still really fun to read. Like, they're so fun to get to know because, like, you know who is who, you understand what everybody's role is, and it's just a nice heartfelt story for me. I can't stop gushing about it. I'm sorry. Nova's perspective really gives you this idea that while she is, you know, very jaded in a lot of ways against the Renegades, she does appreciate that there is some things to like about the Renegades. She basically sees a lot of nuance between the two groups. There's a lot of things that I think that over the course of this book, she comes to realize in terms of the fact that, yes, she's jaded, and yes, she definitely thinks that the Renegades are not what they, you know, are all cracked up to be, but not all of them are as bad as she thinks. And I think the same thing goes for Adrian, where he starts to understand that things are not as great as they seem when it comes to being the Renegades. There's a lot of secrets that are not being really divvied up very well in terms of being revealed to the rest of the Renegades, that the council is basically hiding from everybody. And I think that I just really appreciate how both sides of this spectrum see a lot of the gray area and the nuance that is involved within this world, because there's a lot of it. There is a lot of things that definitely both sides have issues with that need to be resolved, and they cannot just be swept under the rug. The one thing I will say that I know is a huge issue for a lot of people, and it still is an issue for me this third time reading it, is the character Monarch. She's basically a renegade who gets injured very early on, and Nova takes over her place when she is recruited by Adrian for his team. And in all honesty, Monarch could have been completely deleted from this entire series and nobody would have missed her. She's one of those characters where she definitely was kind of a throwaway. Like, she was basically a reason for how Nova could get onto Adrian's team. Still could have been written though, where like Adrian could have just been looking for a final person to make them a 4-person team and they just hadn't filled it as of yet. And that would have been also incredibly plausible. So I don't understand the purpose of having Monarch in when she really didn't do anything. She pretty much was absent for most of the story. So why even have her in the first place? So in terms of book 2, like I said, I have read book 2. It has been some time since I have, and this will be the second time I read it, and the book is called Arch Enemies. I don't remember everything that happens, but I know enough to basically understand kind of like Nova's major plots, which basically this one we learn at the end of Renegades that Ace Anarchy is not dead, and the second book really takes a lot of time to figure out if Nova is really going to still side with her uncle, or if what she's kind of learned through being with the Renegades is enough to basically have her switch sides. And then on top of that, we have Adrian, who is still trying to hide his identity because of a very close save that he had in Renegades, and he's really battling also his feelings for Nova because he doesn't know whether or not Nova actually likes him or not, and he doesn't know if it's worth pursuing in any way. So I feel like I'm still going to really enjoy Arch Enemies. If I remember correctly, I do think that Arch Enemies was less favored. I do think I still gave it a 5-star, but I don't think I liked it as much as I did Renegades. So I'm curious to see what my thoughts are going to be of it now, because I feel like my thoughts on that one are much more fuzzy than Renegades. So I don't know exactly how this one's gonna go, but I am hopeful because, like I said, I would like to give this whole series a 5 out of 5 stars because I really love the first book and I genuinely enjoy the story. I genuinely enjoy the storyline and where things go, but I have also been really nervous of the last book because of the fact that I've heard people say that it's a little heartbreaking at times. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that it's going to turn out okay, but we'll have to see. If you guys read Renegades yourself and or the trilogy in its totality and would like to share your thoughts with me on it, please feel free to down in the comments below. For those of you that have read the other books in this series, please keep spoilers to a minimum. I would love to have a discussion with you guys on this, especially if you have differing opinions from mine, because I'd like to pick everybody's brain about what exactly your guys' thoughts are. Thank you all so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!